We are a horny bunch, us humans. We'll do it with just about anything. And welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves. I'm Travis Ritchie, and this is episode 41. This is the show where we expose each other to new things. Matt, a big music fan, will assign me one of his favorite music artists to listen to each week, and I, a movie buff, will give him one of my favorite films, and we come together on this podcast to discuss it all. And with me, as always, is my very good friend,
Matt Runquist. Hey, Travis, how you doing? This week, I watched the movie The Descent, and you listened to the Afghan Whigs album, 1965.
Yes, both of those things are absolutely true. But before we get to that, let's do a little housekeeping. How the heck are you, my friend?
I'm doing quite well. I just got back from Florida.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean,
Yes.
Congratulations on escaping, but...
Yes, well, thank you very much. It turns out it's real nice and warm there right now. So, political swamp be damned, actual swamp be damned. It's nice and it's 40 degrees warmer there than it is here. And as a Midwesterner, that's all I care about right now.
Yeah. Do you know what? I read recently that Florida was, as of, the 40s, the 49th most populous state in the Union. Like, nobody lived there until fairly recently in our history.
That's fascinating. That's really interesting.
Basically,
I
until
did not
Disney
know that.
moved in.
I had no idea. It
which
became such
explains how they were able to get so much of that land for, so cheap.
Yeah,
I guess.
well, I mean, huge swaths of Florida are almost uninhabitable too. And I think the Orlando area, that is true there too. I mean, Disney did a lot of earth moving to make Disneyland happen.
Yeah.
Sorry, Walt Disney World.
That's Disney
happened.
World, yes.
Yeah,
Disneyland
Disney
is here in LA or
Yeah.
Orange County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, my wife is going to be painting the exterior of a house for one of her clients.
Okay.
In December, we're both going down. We're going to make it a working vacation. And so we're going to be on the Gulf Coast of Florida for 3 weeks. We're going to take the dogs. We're going to take the dogs down. We're going to stay in the guest house. Amy's going to paint for 4 to 8 hours a day, and then we're going to do our thing. I'll probably help out with the painting too.
Sure. Well, that'd be nice of you. Why are they shipping someone else from another state to paint their house? Is she doing something special?
Well, she's very reliable, and it is notoriously difficult to get reliable help these days. Contractors are very, very backed up. There's a lot of demand for the services of contractors. And once you reach a certain income level, you have people, you find people that you like, and then you stick with them. People,
Sure.
people
Well, that
can
makes
be,
sense.
the people can be very particular about what they want, and
course,
so when they
of course.
find something that they like, they have a tendency to stick with
They
it.
spare no expense. Yeah, this is how Jurassic Park happened.
They flew us down just for the weekend to walk through the job, make sure we knew how to, everything about their property.
Wow, that was
Yeah,
my
so-
follow-up question. Whether this last trip was related. That's fantastic.
This was just to figure out the ins and outs, because they're not going to be there at all in December.
Oh, okay. All right. Wow. That's fantastic. That's great, man. I hope I think it'll be more comfortable in December when you're actually down there doing the work. So
Yeah, it should be quite nice.
hopefully, yeah. And I don't know if there's any bad weather that tends to happen in December or not. I don't think it's...
No. Yeah, we'll be... So it's currently the tail end of hurricane season right now, but by December that should be over, barring a freak weather event, because everybody knows those are very unusual these days.
Yeah, well, then you just have to worry about the tidal waves of alligators coming through, and but other than that, you should be fine.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Anything else going on?
I know, that's just about it.
That was a big one.
The 4-day vacation, yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty big one. Well, I had an interesting week. My big news, I guess, is that I met Allison Janney at my acting class.
Well, that's
or my
fun.
acting studio. Yeah, she came in, and every once in a while we'll bring in instructors to teach classes on skills and all sorts of things. We'll bring in directors to talk about things and showrunners. And one of our members had a connection with Allison Janney, and so she came in to just do a talk with us, an hour and a half, talking about her career, and it was wonderful. She was delightful. She brought in one of her dogs, and who
Fun.
was. Yeah, apparently this dog wasn't getting along with her other dogs, and she didn't want to leave it alone, so she brought in this dog, Henry, I think it was, and the cute little thing was just walking around, meeting everybody while we were all talking with Allison, and I thought it was interesting, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, or what's the phrase? If I'm talking out of class, or
Speaking out of school?
speaking out of school, is that a thing, or did we just make that up?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay, well, hopefully I'm not doing that, and is saying that one of the things that surprised me is that she still has a lot of concerns, a lot of not neuroses, but like, those actor worries, I guess, right? Like Allison Janney still worries about whether she's going to work again ever, and I'm sitting there going, wow, you won an Oscar and you're like the most amazing actress that we have working right now. I mean, you're certainly in the top 5. So for you to worry about such things is kind of crazy to me.
It's funny that you should mention that. I was just in the car today with my wife talking about the bassist Flea from the band Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now,
Sure, I've heard of Flea.
Yeah, well, he's an actor as well as a performer.
I've heard of that too, yeah.
Yeah, and she was saying that he still suffers from imposter syndrome sometimes. He says that he'll be up on stage performing and he's like, am I really that good? Do I deserve to be playing for all of these people? So
Yeah.
I don't think that is necessarily something that goes away,
Yeah, no, I suppose that makes sense. It was at once heartening to hear that from someone who was at that level, but also really disconcerting to hear from someone who's at that level. You're like, oh God, I guess that never goes away.
Yeah, no, that's the solution for that is not becoming successful and winning awards. The solution for that is apparently just death.
Death. Yeah, that's the only way to get out of it. Yeah. Well, that's a shame. The other big news is that we did go back to work this week. So I actually was at work and I managed to go to bed at mostly decent times. So I was able to get some sleep. But I was waking up I think my alarm was 5:30 in the morning pretty much every day. And we kept on creeping earlier. Like the first Monday was 7:15 call time and then like 7 o'clock. And then by the end of the week, it was 6:45. And I'm like, come on, you guys. So, but no, I was so happy to be back at work. And we had fun times. If anybody watches the talk, you can see the kind of fun stuff we get up to. And it was a really fun. I don't know if I've ever mentioned the name of the show, but yeah, I hope that's not something I'm going to get in trouble for. But
I think that the fact that you are employed on the talk is not a secret.
Okay, great. Yeah, okay, good. Well, it was a fun week, and then I am gearing up for shooting of Time Wrecked this weekend, this coming weekend. And today we had a rehearsal with just the cast, and it went great. We have such a funny cast lined up for this thing, and I think this is going to be... I really hope that we can find some money to actually make the rest of the season happen, because it so deserves to happen. And ideally, it would be somewhere big, like, some streamer like Paramount Plus would pick it up and produce it, because it's that good. And
awesome.
Yeah. So, that being said, why don't we get into the meat of the show?
Yeah, let's get
Shake
into the
things
meat.
up.
Let's roast the meat.
Roast this meat. And how about we shake it up and do the movie first?
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Tell me
Great.
about the movie, Travis.
Oh, well, I'm going to tell you about The Descent, which was a 2005 British horror film that came out. It was directed and written by Neil Marshall, who has done some other things. He does a lot of like scarier stuff as far as his movies. So this was very early on in his career, and he got he was worried about getting typecast as the horror director. So he tries to do a couple of different things. But this movie is pretty basic plot-wise. It's a group of women who are adventurers, and they do things like whitewater rafting in the first scene, and they talk about them. They talk about climbing trips that they've done, and they decide to go spelunking in a cave, and they're all from the UK, but it does take place here in America. It takes place in like North Carolina or something, and in the Appalachians, and they find this secret cave that nobody's ever done, and they go down it, and it turns out that there are monsters inside, and the monsters are basically like, it's as if humans got trapped down there thousands of years ago and evolved to live in the cave, right? And so they're cannibalistic. They have no eyesight, but they can hear very well, and they communicate via like clicks and sonar and stuff like that. And one by one, our intrepid explorers get picked off. And yeah, I don't think there's a lot more you need to say about it, other than what do you think?
You know, it's funny. My brain just tripped on the term cannibalistic there because
they're not. You know what? I did the same thing.
Are they not? That's the question, right? So because the movie
they don't eat each other. That seems to be true, right?
Yeah, they don't eat each other.
They eat our heroes, and they also eat animals that they bring down from the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem like they eat each other.
Yeah, so then the question just becomes, are they a different species? Which then begs the question, can you have productive intercourse with one of these monsters? You know,
Why was that the place you went to? Nobody was asking that question.
It popped into my head when you said they were cannibalistic. I was like, well, that's really the question, is how long has divergent evolution gone on to the point where this is a fundamentally distinct species?
Sure. Well, I think, if we're going to if we're going to go on this tangent, that Homo sapiens were breeding with Neanderthals successfully. Mm-hmm. So It stands to reason that this species, depending on how long they were down in the caves, and I think it probably wouldn't take all that many generations for them to reach this stage. Okay. So I would say they're probably still compatible genetically.
All right. Well, in that case, then I think the verdict is in. They're cannibals. So good descriptor.
Oh, because they're eating us.
Yeah.
Well, not if we're a different species.
Right, but we just decided they weren't.
No, we just decided that they were compatible genetically. Do you think that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were the same species?
Oh, yeah.
They're not. I don't know. Right? A horse and a donkey aren't the same species, but they can still breed.
I got to admit, I feel a little behind the 8 ball here. But anyways, the point is, I liked the movie. I did.
I want to start a new podcast now that's all just figuring out what species in movies can interbreed.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, Klingons and Vulcans have made babies, or maybe not Klingons and Vulcans, but Klingons and humans for sure.
Klingons and humans, Vulcans and humans. Humans, basically, I think we've established can breed with pretty much anything.
We are a horny bunch, us humans. We'll do it with just about anything. So I'm going to say definitively that humans would absolutely try to breed with this species if they weren't trying to eat them.
That's fair. Yeah, I liked the movie a lot. I will say this.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the first half of this movie better than the second half.
Okay.
Now, I don't think that's because I'm not fond of horror movies, because it turns out over the course of this podcast, I've actually liked quite a few of the horror movies.
Yeah.
I'm turning into, I wouldn't say a horror movie fan, but a horror movie appreciator.
Sure, yeah.
But this movie really does leave you kind of at your own devices to justify the existence of this species. It doesn't really... There's like the vaguest hand waving of what the heck is going on here. And sometimes I like that, right? Because it allows you to just watch the movie and enjoy the action without getting hung up on, justifications that fundamentally aren't going to make any sense because they're kind of crazy, right?
Sure.
But this one, there were such big holes. Like, are there really no stories in rural North Carolina about the cave people that, I mean, there's more than a dozen of these things. It's not clear exactly how many of them are, but they're big. Sure. They're big creatures. They need to eat a lot because you need that for energy. They're very fast moving, right? They're clearly warm blooded. So they've got to be like killing like the local large mammal population, right? There's thousands and thousands of bones down here, and so the idea
fascinated that the things you get tripped up by.
There's this undiscovered cave system, right? And there's these big predators inside that are going to.
Let's just say it's the one cave system, and let's say 50. Would you say that's a good high end?
A couple of dozen at least.
Yeah, let's say high end 50 of these things down there. And because they do kill a bunch of them, and every once in a while you'll look and there's like 10 of them crawling in at you. So you don't think that you could sustain 50 members of a community on elk, on enough elk, and
I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm saying it couldn't happen without like the humans in the area like finding out about it, at least in like a local legend type of way, right? Like if we had been like, if there was like a Hodag festival, like in northern, like if there was some kind of cryptid explanation for these things.
But there may have been, and we just don't know about it.
I think
there's
so. You do this thing where you like justify things that are totally not in the movie at all, and I love that about you because it's very optimistic, but it's not in the movie at all.
Well,
and
I think my thing is that we don't need that. I don't for this movie to work.
I need it for the movie to work.
Okay.
These are incredibly dangerous predators that no one has ever seen and no one has ever heard of, and are blind.
Because anybody that goes into the cave doesn't come out. Who's going to write the legend?
Okay, so everybody that goes right, but like when people disappear, we look for them.
Yeah, but it's a hard to find cave. People go missing all the time. There are millions of people that go missing and are never found. Maybe not that many, but like lots.
Listener,
we're laughing at missing people, but no, there are missing people that never get found, and their whereabouts are never solved, and and it doesn't have to be a lot. I think the miners that went down there, that they found their equipment were probably 100 years old, right? So
what I want you to do, Travis, here, so that we can get off of this subject, is I want you to say, Matt, you might have a point. That's what I want you to say.
My dearest Matt, you have an excellent point.
Awesome. Thanks. So that being said, I really liked the first half of this movie because at one point, so I had forgotten your description that you gave me last week where you did mention the monsters, or I think you mentioned there was something else in the cave.
Sure.
For the first half of this movie, I was like, is this just a tense psychological thriller that revolves around like the danger of their situation and then the emotional psychodrama between the women? And I was into that movie. Like I was really into that movie, and I thought it was really exciting and interesting and tense, very well shot. I loved the lighting choices and the way that they it's clear that they did shoot a bunch of this in an actual cave. I'm sure certain portions of it were built sets. I would imagine like the big set pieces were
most
built
of
sets.
It was sets, yeah.
Yeah, but there was clearly like some actual caving going on too, and there was clearly like this is how you explore a cave, and there was good groundwork done there. That was all super grounded and super realistic and super tense, and super suspenseful. I really loved that. And then when the monsters showed up, it just started tripping those parts of my brain that I'm like, okay, so yes, this is a cool scene. Oh, wow, these monsters are dangerous, scary. That was all really good, right? But I was having a hard time letting go of what are these things? What are the, okay, sure, I can make up a justification for it. they're humans. They got trapped in the cave. It kind of hints at that sort of, and okay, I believe that, right? But there were just times when it was hard for me to get over. A lot of great imagery in this movie. Like there's this scene where it's sort of like this blood and goo pit that she has to, and I'm afraid, folks, I can't remember any of these characters' names, and even during the movie, I was having a hard time coming up with
I know.
names.
The main character's name was Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah ends up in the goo pit, and then she comes up out of it, and it's kind of a famous shot from the movie. Very, very frightening stuff. Why is there a goo pit here and not anywhere else? I don't know. But that didn't bother me, right? It was scary, and that was kind of
gotta have
enough.
a goo pit somewhere.
Yeah. Well, it's like we've said before about horror movies. If you want to make something scarier, make it wet. Right. That's how they follow that for the monsters here. And yeah, when Sarah is like wetter, definitely scarier. I liked all of that. Yeah, I got to admit, that's my feeling about the movie. I really liked the tense psychological thriller that it felt like we were getting in the first half. And I also liked the horror movie, but I liked it less because I felt a little it kind of felt like it let the characters off the hook a little bit, or it kind of let that tense psychological thriller go for a significant chunk of the movie, and I wanted that movie.
Yeah. No, I get that for sure, and they did a really good job with the tenseness. And I, watching this over again, didn't realize how long it took for the monsters to show up. You don't get them for quite a while, except for little hints here and there that could be hallucinations. They could be not a real threat. And they set up Sarah's character really well as being damaged, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd kind of, I don't know what in my head thought that we were actually going to focus on one of the other characters as being the emergent hero. I thought that they were doing this weird thing where they start with one character and then it turns out to be a smaller character in the middle of the
You thought maybe Sarah was not going to be the final girl.
Right, and I thought that they were playing with that because I was like, there's no way that this person can come out of this thing unscathed or alive. And,
very scathed.
Yeah, very, very scathed, but alive. Yeah, and they start out the movie with Sarah on a white rafting trip with Juno and Beth, two of the friends, and afterwards she is met by her daughter and husband, and it's kind of, you get this little hint that maybe the husband and I think Beth or Juno. Yeah, the husband and Juno were having a little thing, and you kind of get that hint. But then almost immediately, Sarah's husband and daughter die in a car accident that she also is in, but she's the lone survivor. And so this climbing, spelunking trip is actually part of Juno's plan to help Sarah kind of like heal. And so three other friends join them. And so you've got 6, I think, total. And I think one of the things I really loved in the end of this was Sarah's arc. Like, she goes from about as wounded as you can get to being a survivor because she has to, like, you have a choice. You can survive or die. And she chooses to survive. And I really liked that. And she becomes, it's almost a very Sarah Connor type journey, or Ripley almost, although Ripley is a bit stronger at the beginning of Alien. But yeah, Sarah Connor's a really good allegory because, at the beginning of Terminator, she's kind of weak. She's a waitress. And by the end of it, she's killing the Terminator herself. And that's kind of what Sarah's arc is here. I liked the monsters.
Yeah, I liked them. I liked the monsters too. I wanted just a hint more backstory.
Okay,
right?
That's fair. Yeah, and I wonder if maybe because they gave some, like, they have a scientist character who, the girl who is like going to school for science or something, or biology, and she's the one who
doctor.
offers the bit of
She's a
hand wavy, like, well, this looks like a Homo sapien that's been down here. Whatever. I got personally enough of an explanation that like thousands of years ago, some humans came down here and they got trapped, and now they've evolved into these beings, and they're scary. And one of the things I love about that is that it's a real world monster. You know, it's not supernatural. It's something that could exist underneath our feet that we just don't know about until we make the mistake of traveling out of the light. You know, our comfortable sun-filled world that we're so familiar with. If we take one step too far, suddenly we're in life-threatening danger by these things that we can't see. So I really liked that, and I do agree with you on the filming, the lighting. It did a very good job of setting up like a lighting cue. And like different looks for like once the characters get split up, you have a couple of characters bathed in green light. You have a couple of characters bathed in like candlelight. You have a couple with their LED.
Yeah,
like,
that's one of the big technical challenges of this movie is that the characters outside of Juno and Sarah are not super well realized. Like we get a little bit from them, but they're a little hard to tell apart, right? They're like late 20s, early 30s white chicks, right?
Yeah,
and
you get the bad girl, but beyond her, like
yeah, and so the thing that the movie does do a good job of giving you little hints of like, oh, this is this person each time, because it can be hard to keep track of them. The movie is very dark, obviously, and so that was really appreciated by me.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So my thing, and we're getting into spoilers here, but that should be assumed with this podcast, I think. At the end, Sarah kind of figures out that Juno not only cheated on her husband with her husband, right? But she also figures out that Juno killed one of the other women accidentally, and might have been Beth.
That she left her to die. That's actually the distinction. She cut her accidentally, but then rather than staying with her to try to help her or to call to the other women to try to bring them to her, she decided she was beyond help, left her to die, and then Sarah discovered her. Pretty brutal stuff. I think the thing that caught my ear earlier when you were speaking was you said you really liked Sarah's arc, but for me the thing that motivates that arc is not just like survive or die. It's that vengeance aspect to it that gets her to decide to survive, right? When she finds out about Juno sleeping with her husband and Juno leaving the other character to die, and I'm afraid I can't remember which one it is, but
I think it was
leaving
Beth,
the other character
because I think it was
die,
one of the original three.
That sense of like righteous anger that she feels towards Juno is what motivates her to be like, I'm gonna survive and get back at you for the things that you've done.
Interesting. Okay, well that makes a little more sense then, and because then when she runs into Beth, when she runs into Juno, they reconnect and are fighting, crawlers together, and then Sarah makes the choice to wound Juno in the leg so she can't run away, basically to leave her to die at the hands of the monsters so that she can escape. And I was wondering what you thought about that move.
I mean, it's a parallel to what happened earlier with Juno,
Right. But when Juno was in the middle of a fight for her life, right? And she's killing a monster that's literally attacking her in the moment. And then she spins around to kill what she thinks is another monster that's reaching for her, and it turns out to be Beth, right? And she kind of skewers Beth through the neck. And then what are you going to do? What can you do about that? Like Beth isn't getting out of this place alive. So
well, I think you have to
really
remember
Juno's fault, is it?
Yes, it is absolutely Juno's fault because Juno is the one that brought them to an unmarked cave without filing a flight
Okay,
plan.
so yeah, technically, yes, this is all Juno's fault. This whole thing.
The
Yeah.
whole thing is unequivocally
But it was done
Juno's
with good
fault.
intentions. I just don't know if I thought that Sarah's like skewering of Juno's leg to leave her as bait was warranted.
I'm going to go with tough but fair.
Tough but fair. That's all right. And she does. There is a final shot when she gets into the car where she sees Juno's. Like she has a hallucination of Juno's corpse sitting there in the car with her, so she isn't left unmarked psychologically from that act. So I guess that makes some sense there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I you know what? This warranted a sequel. I have not seen it recently, so I don't remember anything about the sequel. Although it was not written or directed by the same guy. So, and I think that Sarah probably comes back, and maybe it has something to do with going back to the cave to maybe recover everyone's bodies. I don't know. That makes sense as a story, but I mean, it's certainly not like some evil company's like we need to use these things as weapons, like an alien type story. But
Right.
Yeah, I'd be curious. Would you watch the sequel?
So I'm going to be honest and admit that I had my wife look up the plot synopsis of the sequel because I did not want to watch it. But I was like,
You
curious.
wanted
I was
to know
like,
what happens?
I was like, how on earth do you make a sequel to this movie? Like, clearly Sarah's not dumb enough to go back in this cave, right? So is it just
Unless-
like, did they jump? Yeah. So it turns out that the sequel is very shortly afterwards, and she is dumb enough to go back in the cave.
Oh, is it like immediately afterwards? Is
Yeah,
it like
it's like a couple days later.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
I am curious. I'm not sure I want you to tell me more because I'm kind of curious to watch it.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, maybe I will. What do you have anything else to say before you lay some ratings on this?
No, I think I'm good to rate this.
All right, give it on me. That doesn't make any sense.
The first
to me?
half of this movie is a 9 for me. The second half of this movie is a bog standard, very, very bloody, but bog standard horror film of a 5. Those two things average out to a 7 for me, and I feel like that's a very fair rating. I liked this movie. I wouldn't watch it again. I would watch a remake of this movie that took the crawlers out entirely and just had a tense psychological battle between Beth and Juno.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That could be a very interesting story, too. Yeah. I am going to go ahead and give this an 8. I really liked it. I would watch it again. Boy, is it better than an 8? It might be. No, I'll stick with an 8. That's fine. That's a really good rating for a horror movie. So yeah, but I really liked it. I had no qualms about watching this again, and I could see myself watching it again in another 5 or 10 years, just to kind of like come back to it. So, but yeah, I'm happy with it. Awesome. Well, tell me about the Afghan Whigs.
The Afghan Whigs are a fascinating band who had their biggest albums in the 90s. They're still rocking out today. They just released a new album last year, early this year, something like that.
Really?
Yeah. But this album is called 1965, and it is their 5th or 6th studio album. So Afghan Whigs is kind of an interesting band to me because they were lumped in with the rest of the alternative movement in the early 90s. They were on the label Sub Pop out of Seattle, just like Nirvana and Tad and Mudhoney and all those bands. But they did not share a sound with any of those bands. It's a rock sound that's based in the R&B and soul of the late 60s and early 70s. And I came to them through MTV. They had a very popular song called Debonair, and that was off their big major label debut. And I loved that album, and I followed them all through the 90s. And when this album came out, I found it stunning because It took sort of the excesses of some of their earlier albums. Greg Dooley, the lead singer, was kind of known for like hitting a lot of blue notes and kind of over singing a lot of things. And he does not have the world's greatest voice, and he would push it really hard. And it was very much an acquired taste. But on this album, he really dials that back. The songs are very focused. Most of them are really relatively short. There's a couple of longer tracks on here, but most of them are in that like pop song wheelhouse. And I really like this music a lot. This album, I think, is their best album. It's still, there's always, in the Afghan Whigs, there's always a sense of like sort of menace, sexual menace, right? Which is kind of an unusual thing to have it be so overt, right? Sex is obviously all over rock and roll, but usually it's like playful or just like misogynist. But this isn't misogynist. It's like sexually potent, and I think it's interesting and unusual and good.
Wow.
My favorite track is Crazy. It's the second one. But there's also 66. Gosh, is my favorite track Crazy or is it 66? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Wow.
What do you think, Travis?
Matt, I want to say that is some of the best describing of one of our bands that that you've done for me so far.
Thank you.
So I will say, first of all, how do I approach this? Before I go, I want to actually play America's favorite home game. What do you think I'm going to think of this album?
Oh, okay. I was going to cop out, but no, I will say I don't think you loved this. That's what I'm going to say. I think you'll be appreciative of some of this, but I don't think you loved it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So one of the things that right off the bat that I want to note is that I thought, I was listening to this and I very much heard the similarities between a lot of those Seattle grunge bands that I think you're referring to. Like in my head, I was like, oh, this has a lot of Nirvana in it. And I am not a big Nirvana fan, but I was hearing that just from my untrained ear. And although it's also very rocky, like rock and roll-y. And one experience that I think sums up my my entire experience with this album is that I was listening to it on my hike, and I found that my feet were like keeping a really good beat with the music. Like there's a couple of songs in here that are, I think mostly has a really good beat, and it's like a solid, I don't know, 100, 120 beats per minute. And then the next moment, I realized I was clenching my teeth. And I was like, yeah, because that's how the music made me feel. And so I think that I was turned on by the rock and roll aspects of it. It's very bassy rock and roll. Like it's a very bassy drum, bass drums, very bassy kind of guitar and bass work, I'm assuming. And I feel like it was maybe a little too dark for me. But I was able to appreciate, as you say, the music most of the time. To a way that it was like, okay, great. I can walk to this. I can move my body to this music, which I do enjoy quite a bit. I was torn on just about everything else. I was the lyrics are at some points interesting and lyrical and fun. Well, maybe never fun, but interesting and poetic. Yeah. But there are also a lot of times where the lyrics are either dark in a way that I didn't like, like a lot of like drug references or stuff that just really doesn't tickle my fancy. And also a couple of times when it's very repetitive to a point where I was just like getting really annoyed by the repetitiveness. And I feel like actually 66 might have been one of the offenders in that in that. Like there's a bit where they say come on, come on, and they're just over and over and over again. Come on, come on, come on. And I was like, okay, this is stop. And I also think 66 might be the one where, does that start off with like very sexual noises?
Yes.
Okay, so that was a very interesting experience for me, this song, because it starts off with this very kind of distorted sexual, maybe moaning, maybe, something, maybe not all that pleasant moaning. And then all of a sudden you get this like rhythm, this kind of really interesting rock and roll beat that kind of comes in, right? And it's suddenly, and yeah, in my head, I'm like, oh, suddenly this is an interesting song. And then you get the guy's voice goes, yeah. And I'm like, no, no, not that. And so that was like a very back and forth, negative, positive, negative, like experience for me. So, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the guy's voice. I'm glad from what you say that he kind of toned things down a little bit, but I will say that I didn't love the darkness of the singing, and this is where I was picking up a lot of that grunge vibe from this, and it didn't really play to me all that well. One thing I did notice, we had another vampire reference in this album. That's like, 3 weeks in a row of vampires. I was hoping, because as I was listening to it, I was hoping that in my head, I was like, I would love to see someone else sing a song to this music, right? And I was like, I feel like this music's pretty good. I don't like the vocals. What would it sound like if someone else sang? And then the last song on the album is a instrumental track, and it's not good.
No, you didn't like it?
I didn't like it, and so I was like, well, okay, I guess I got what I asked for. So yeah, I mean,
one of Afghan Whigs' most famous tracks, and it is from Debonair, their major label debut, is the song "My Curse," and that song is sung by Marcy Mays, a female vocalist. So it is certainly something that they've done, and they do prominently feature female vocalists on several of their other albums. Greg
I'm
Dooley
gonna go listen to Debonair. Yeah, it's their top song on YouTube Music.
Oh,
so
sorry, Debonair is the song. Gentleman is the album, I believe.
Oh, yeah, Gentleman is the album.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, My Curse is a wonderful song, but very, very dark subject matter. So it may not be your cup of tea. The Afghan Whigs do really deal with sort of this like seedy underbelly of, I want to say, city life, to be honest. Like it does always feel like it's grounded in this sort of metropolitan like grime. And so and this is very produced music. Like there's strings, there's brass, there's backup
there's a couple
vocals.
Horns I heard in here. I was like, that's beautiful. A couple of moments where I was really struck by like, oh, I like that a lot. So
they really produce these albums, and if you look at the number, so there's 4 primary members of the band, but there's always 10, 12, 15 performers on the album because there's always lots and lots of layers of what they're doing. But to go back to what I was saying, like this is like music that really tries to engage with like ugly things, So even when the music is pretty or beautiful, the lyrical content is nearly always really dark. And I will tell you, this album is one of their like lighter albums, if you can believe that. So yeah,
I can believe that.
Yeah, like you mentioned drug references. Like there's songs about heroin addiction. There's songs about relationships gone wrong, that
You
sort
know,
of thing.
yeah, and I can absolutely see the value in that kind of art as a musical style. But I think for me, it's the same reason I don't really watch documentaries. I'm not trying to be immersed in the real, right? Especially the grime and grit and darkness of the real place I live. When I seek out entertainment, I kind of want to be transported away. You know, that's one of the reasons I love comedy so much, I think.
Well, and
And
it's funny
sci-fi.
that you should say that, right? Because certainly when it comes to movies, I'm very much the same way. We've talked a lot before about how there are certain things, both in TV and movies, that are just they're just too dark for me. You've mentioned that you love the show Breaking Bad. I watched the first 3 episodes of Breaking Bad, and I just couldn't handle how unrelentingly difficult and dark it was. And so many people have told me, "Oh, just get through the first season," and yeah, I don't want to.
No, you're not wrong. If
I,
darkness is what you hate, yeah, I can absolutely see that. Sure.
yeah. So I don't know why I'm more open to it in music, but I am.
And that's interesting. I'm much more I'm much more open to it in a narrative structure like film or TV than I am in music. So we're flipped on that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as far as a rating, I'm gonna give this a 4.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's definitely moments in here where I saw things that were redeeming qualities, but ultimately this is not music that I would listen to.
Okay. Okay. This is a 9 for me. Like I said, this
Nice.
is one of my favorite bands of the 90s, and this is my favorite of their albums. It's
That's
not
great.
quite a 10 to me. Especially, honestly, I think I probably would have given it a 10 before I listened it back a couple of times this week, but there are some holes there. This one, they actually did a concept album before this, which I think maybe holds together a little bit better just because
Okay.
it's thematically a little more coherent. This one does kind of jump around a bit.
Yeah,
So,
I
give
actually
it a
I
9.
liked one of the things I did like about it was the variety in it. It wasn't all the same sound by any means throughout
No,
the album,
no.
so you do get some variety. And again, I loved the up. It was surprisingly upbeat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, literally a faster
Yeah.
beat, which I appreciated for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Well, I like that. I did sense that this is kind of the music that you were going to really rally behind, and
Yeah.
I like that. I like that you liked it.
Cool. Well, do you know what you're going to give me next week, Travis?
I have a suspicion, but let's see. Where are we in the year? So we got one more week before things start to before we lose the Halloween spirit. Shall we say?
Yes. This next episode will be released on October 29th.
Great. So I want to give you. Have you seen A Quiet Place?
I have not.
I'm going to give it to you. It's the one I wanted to give you last week, but I wasn't going to because you didn't have a good sound system. But man, I feel like I want to have you watch this movie because I like it so much. I'm not going to tell you much about it except that it was written and directed by John Krasinski of The Office. He was Jim in The Office, and he filmed it with his wife, Emily Blunt, who is a national treasure. Yeah, so it is a monster movie, I'll give you that much. But it's a suspenseful. It's much more about the suspense, and that's the thing I loved it. And I will say, without telling you why, that this was one of the most incredible theater-going experiences I've ever had in my life. And I'll tell you more about that next week.
Awesome.
Yeah, what you got for me?
All right. Well, next week for you, I have the what do I have? Oh, Churches. I have a band called Churches. Have you heard of Churches?
No, I mean, I've heard of churches, but I haven't heard of churches.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is it's probably going to irritate you because the band is called Churches. It's pronounced
reason?
Churches. Nope, it's pronounced Churches, but it is spelled CHRVCHES. E-S.
Oh, they use a V instead of a U?
They
like,
use a V instead of a U. So I know. See, I think I spelled that wrong, but the point is they use a V instead of a U. So
I probably will call it Versus.
yeah, which is not good for anyone. But they have an album called Love Is Dead. It was their third album. It was released in 2018, I think. It's super good. I love it so much, and I really hope you like it too. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's sort of a fusion of electronica and rock, and it's just good, like big fun sounds, great vocals. It might be a little repetitive for you, I don't know. It's not something that trips my triggers sometimes, and so I don't always notice it, and then you bring it up and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it is kind of repetitive. But
all right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. I'm certainly interested to experience Versus for the first time.
He's gonna do it, guys. He's gonna commit to the bit.
Do you know, I heard that the Rolling Stones were putting out a new album. Have you heard about this?
I have not heard about that.
Apparently, it's getting good reviews, and people like Lady Gaga are part of it. And I don't know. I just heard that today, so I don't know if that's something. I don't listen to the Rolling Stones. I don't know if you do, but
I am not I'm a Beatles guy. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago.
We did just talk about this.
In
All
the
right.
eternal battle between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones.
But does that mean you have to dislike the Rolling Stones?
It doesn't mean I have to dislike the Rolling Stones, but I do dislike.
You coincidentally dislike them. Interesting.
Well, actually, that's actually a little unfair. I like some Rolling Stones songs, but in general, I don't like their songs. And a lot of their very highly regarded songs are the songs of theirs that I like the least.
Oh, interesting. So give me all your lovin'. Give me all your lovin'. All I want is maybe that not the Rolling Stones?
It doesn't sound familiar to me.
Well, we've already established. So this would be a good time to tell you about the experiment I did about how inept at music I am. And so I went on to YouTube Music and I clicked on the charts button and just wanted to look at the 100 biggest songs in YouTube Music and like how many of these people have I heard of. That's all. I just wanted to know, who have I heard of? The top song on YouTube Music right now is from Doja Cat, and I have heard of Doja Cat, although I will say only recently, within the last year or so, and when I heard my friends at work talking about her, I want to say?
Yes.
I had no idea. Like, I thought they were playing some sort of joke on me, that was a real thing. So otherwise, I've heard of Drake, who has a song on here, a couple of songs on the list. But other than that, you've heard of the best-selling rapper of the last 10 years? You've heard of that person?
In fact, Drake has several songs on the top 100. But he just released a new album.
Let me tell you. There's Usher. More Drake. Other than Drake, it takes me, I guess, Shakira shows up at number 42. I've heard of her. But you have to go down to number 42 before I have heard of anybody. Just heard of them. And like, here's Miley Cyrus at number 50. I've heard of her. And so like System of a Down, I've heard of that, and that shows for some reason at number 57. I don't know anything. And Olivia Rodrigo showing up at number 61. Our recent purpose. Weirdly enough, Taylor Swift doesn't show up until number 63. I thought she was like the biggest thing on two legs.
She is the biggest thing on two legs, but she hasn't released new music in over a year.
Oh, okay.
She's about to take over the charts because her re-recording of 1989 is about to come out.
Oh.
So, I don't know if you know this, but she doesn't like her original record label due to...
Right. I've heard about the whole thing about her.
So she's,
the only way she can get her rights is by re-recording everything. And...
Yeah, so she's re-recording her early albums. And 1989, which is her most successful pop album, is coming out shortly.
Well, it's interesting. I just thought that because this is the top 100 songs in the U.S., I didn't realize that meant they mostly had to be new songs. Like,
Yeah.
that makes
Well,
some sense.
it's like right now. It's sort of their equivalent of the Billboard,
Billboard
Top
list. Yeah.
Hot 100. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like Drake's album, I believe, came out last Tuesday. So that's why there's a bunch of Drake tracks up at the top.
Got it. Well, I just thought that was fascinating and goes to show how little I know about music and our musical world that we live in.
Hey, listener, do you want to educate Travis? Well, write to him and me at exposingourselvespodcast@gmail.com, or go on our Facebook and tell him what a foolish, uneducated idiot he is. How do you find that? You just search for Exposing Ourselves on Facebook. And I would really enjoy it if you did that.
Oh, I would really
Also-
enjoy it too, just as much as I enjoy having you expose yourself to me. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And hey, you know what else would make Travis happy is to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform.
That would leave me so happy. Thank you. Oh, Matt, you just are doing everything. You're exposing yourself to me and doing all the housekeeping. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for exposing yourself to me, Travis.
I love doing it. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.